You know it's true. Everything I do it for Q. I really didn't want to do another singing bit at the start of this one because I've done that a lot lately, but it was right there. This is a review of the Star Trek The Next Generation episode, Qpid. If you have not seen this episode and you don't want to know what happens in it, be warned, spoilers beyond this point. It's the Robin Hood episode, one of the most weirdly divisive episodes TNG ever produced. Let's see if we can find out why. The Enterprise has come to Tagus 3 for some kind of big shot archaeology summit. Picard is giving the keynote address, and so he's up late working on his speech. When he finally returns to his quarters, he notices one of those little DTF statues from Risa, and he's like, I wonder who's DTF? And then Vash walks in, and Picard's like, oh, I guess it's me then. You remember Vash? She and Picard had a romantic adventure on Risa in the episode Captain's Holiday. She steals artifacts and sells them for profit, but Picard likes her because she's got moxie and spunk. But we'll skip over that part to the morning after, where Picard and Vash are having breakfast, and then Beverly shows up. What an uncomfortable situation for our normally confident and in-control captain. Vash and Beverly are both amused by Picard's discomfort. He clearly hadn't anticipated the two women in his life, sort of, running into each other this morning. Vash asks for a tour of the ship, and Beverly is only too happy to oblige. Picard's like, whew, thank God I got the weird, uncomfortable part of the day over with so early. Vash and Beverly go to 10 Forward, where Riker is sitting at the bar taking some liquid courage. It's breakfast time, mind you. He sets eyes on Vash and moves right in with one of his patented corny pickup lines, but she sees right through him and even correctly identifies him, since Jean-Luc does an excellent impression of him. Can I just pause the plot summary for a second and say that one of my favorite parts of this episode is the implication that at some point while he was hanging out with Vash on Risa, Picard just got incredibly gossipy about his crewmates on the Enterprise. Vash knows who Beverly is. She recognizes Riker within moments because apparently Picard does an impression of him. Hilarious. Riker takes over the tour from Beverly and shows Vash to the bridge, where she sits in the big chair and makes things awkward for Picard again before leaving. Later on, Vash is mingling at a reception for the archaeology big shots, and she hears something from Troy that she's been hearing from the rest of the crew all day. Picard hasn't told them about her. What gives? Is he embarrassed? Did their adventure/fling mean nothing to him? Picard tries to explain that, he's the captain and he doesn't share private details of his life with the crew, but Vash doesn't want to hear it. Then things go from bad to worse when Picard finds Q waiting in his office. After his last visit, where he temporarily lost his powers, Q has returned to repay Picard for watching out for him. Picard's like, nope, not necessary, we're cool. You don't have to repay me, please don't. But Q's like, I'll think of something, and disappears in a flash, as he is wont to do. Q figures out how to repay Picard a little later when he eavesdrops on an argument Picard has with Vash, whom Picard discovers is planning to trespass on an ancient and restricted archaeological site. Over Picard's protests, Q decides to prove to Picard that his attraction to Vash is a weakness, a dangerous vulnerability. And what better way to prove this than to transport Picard, his senior staff, and Vash into a fantasy scenario patterned on the story of Robin Hood? Don't try to answer. It was a rhetorical question. There is no better way. So, Picard and the gang are whisked away from the archaeological conference in the middle of Picard's big speech and find themselves in Sherwood Forest. Picard is Robin Hood, of course, and the rest of the crew have been cast as other members of the Merry Men. Geordi is Alan Adale. Data is Friar Tuck. Worf is Will Scarlet, and not too happy about it. Beverly and Deanna are present. And Riker is cast in the role of Little John because he's so absurdly, preposterously tall. Look at how tall he is. Like a carnival sideshow attraction, like a walking funhouse mirror reflection. What, did your parents put HGH in your baby bottle, you goddamn freak? Other than the beard, being tall is Riker's defining physical characteristic. I know he's not the only tall Star Trek character. Just off the top of my head, there's also Saru from Star Trek Discovery, but ain't no way Saru is taller than Riker. You want to see my impression of Saru saying hello to Riker? Commander Riker, good to see you. Yes, I know Doug Jones is taller than Jonathan Frakes, but not to me! Anyway, Q shows up, having cast himself as the Sheriff of Nottingham, and informs Picard that Maid Marian, Vash, has been taken prisoner at Nottingham Castle and is scheduled to be executed tomorrow. Q leaves, and there's some disagreement over what to do next. There's also some disagreement over whether Geordi should keep playing that goddamn mandolin. Worf says no. Picard announces that he will go to the castle to rescue Vash alone. Riker doesn't like that, but Picard says he's not going to risk anyone else's life for Q's amusement, so off he goes. Meanwhile, at the castle, Vash has managed to turn things in her favor, at least for the time being, by sweet-talking Sir Guy of Gisborne into marrying her instead of having her head chopped off. Q doesn't like this, but he does seem intrigued by Vash's ability to manipulate circumstances to her favor. Picard climbs through Vash's window to rescue her, but she's insulted that he showed up alone instead of formulating a brilliant plan and bringing the rest of the crew along to help. So Vash refuses to go with him, and a minute later the guards show up and Picard is captured. That night, Q discovers that Vash has betrayed Sir Guy by writing a message to Riker, urging him to come to the castle to rescue Picard. Q's like, I respect the hustle, but your head's getting chopped off too. And now it's time for some classic Robin Hood shit. Picard and Vash are marched down to the block for their executions, but Riker and the rest of the crew have taken it upon themselves to sneak into the castle and save the day. Data creates a distraction. Good thing he keeps a couple of cherry bombs in his forearm for just such an occasion. And the merry men dump their monk disguises and start killing. Riker knocks him out with his staff, Geordi and Worf get to slash and stab to their heart's content, and Beverly and Deanna get to break pottery over people's heads. Because what would they know about using a sword? They're just girls! Picard kills Sir Guy and then fights his way up to the tower, where Vash was taken when the fight broke out. Picard throws down his sword and demands that Q end the fantasy and send everyone home. Q shows up and says, oh, sure, I'll send you home. Now that you've learned your lesson, you risked your life and the lives of your crew, all to save the woman you love? And that's bad? You should feel bad for doing that? I guess that's what I'm saying here. Vash disagrees, and Q's like, oh, whatever. And in a flash, everyone is back on the Enterprise. The conference room is empty. I guess the rest of the audience got tired of waiting around after Picard disappeared and just left or something. No one knows where Vash is, and Picard is worried, but then she shows up in his office, and she's got a surprise. She's partners with Q now, and he's going to take her to places no human has ever been, so she can steal all kinds of artifacts. Picard's like, all right, well, you be careful, because I really care about you, I suppose. And that's it. When I see people talking about this episode nowadays, their opinions are generally pretty positive. Most fans seem to enjoy Qpid, but let me tell you, and perhaps some of you who were around in the early 90s when this show was originally airing, or in the mid to late 90s when the internet was really becoming a thing, will remember this. Back in the day, there were quite a few fans who hated this episode. For all kinds of reasons. They thought it was too silly. They didn't think it was funny. They didn't like that we see the heroes killing people in the climactic fight at the castle. They didn't like Vash. There were a ton of Trekkies who just flat out hated Vash and hated the fact that she was even there. I'm sure there's still some element of this in the fandom today, but for the most part, the balance seems to have shifted in the last few decades so that now Qpid is fondly remembered. For the most part. And I'm glad to see that, because I like this episode. It's not one of the best episodes of the series, nor is it particularly important. It has nothing pertinent to say about a social issue. Its insight into human nature goes no deeper than, love is good, actually. It's a lark, but it's fun, and it's obvious that the cast is having fun in it. This is one of those TNG episodes that, with very few changes, could have been an episode of classic Trek. The tone, the sets and costumes, the heroes acting out folklore scenario, it's all a match for the goofier TOS episodes like Shore Leave or Spectre of the Gun. And I mean that as a compliment, because I am a strong advocate for Star Trek having a silly side and embracing it, even if it doesn't always work. It works in Qpid, for the most part. The jokes land more often than not, and the best ones are rooted in the characters. Worf's pitiful protest of, "I am not a merry man," upon their arrival in Sherwood is a beloved one-liner because it's Worf, our proud but picked-on warrior, saying it. If that line went to, say, Geordi, it wouldn't have been nearly as funny. The Robin Hood stuff is handled relatively well. The episode is a serviceable pastiche of the Errol Flynn Adventures of Robin Hood and manages to rush through several of the major beats of that story without feeling like it's rushing. And Q's taking an interest in Vash fits with his character. It makes sense that he would be intrigued by her deviousness and commitment to self-preservation, both as an observer of humanity and as someone who shares those same qualities. And as for Vash herself, I got no problem with Vash. Is Jennifer Hetrick the most electrifying guest star Star Trek ever had? No, but she's certainly not the worst. She's fine. And her presence in the story makes sense for practical reasons. If you're going to do a Robin Hood episode, and Picard's going to be Robin Hood, who's going to be Marion? You could make Beverly Marion, since her and Picard have an already established romantic tension, but if you do that, and have Picard rescue Beverly as part of Q's misguided lesson on the danger of love, and then the next episode they're just back to their typical platonic relationship, that feels too much like hitting the reset button on a significant bit of character development. Too much even for an extremely episodic show like TNG. Alternatively, you could have Picard and Beverly deal with their feelings for each other and decide to go on just being friends in the episode itself. But then you've got to find space to do that in a way that doesn't feel tacked on. And this episode has enough going on already, what with the Q and the Robin Hood and the so forth and whatnot. So bringing in Vash, a character we've met before, but who can be quickly reestablished for the sake of the uninitiated, who won't be sticking around afterwards, is really the best choice. And Vash's capacity for duplicity not only provides an opening for her partnership with Q, it also makes for an interesting spin on Maid Marian. It's a shame the women who are actually in the regular cast don't get anything more interesting to do, though. Though I like it, Qpid is not a perfect episode, and one of its glaring flaws is in how it treats Beverly and Deanna. Things start out okay in that respect. Beverly's early interactions with Vash are delightful, and I really enjoy how the episode, written by future Deep Space Nine showrunner Ira Steven Behr from a story by Randy Russell and Behr, completely avoids portraying even a hint of jealousy between Beverly and Vash. There's no competition for the affections of Jean-Luc. No, I saw him first. Beverly and Vash are instantly united in their mission to make Picard as uncomfortable as possible, and it's great. But after Beverly hands Vash off to Riker in 10 Forward, she mostly disappears from the episode. And poor Deanna is barely in it to begin with. When the action shifts to Sherwood, Beverly and Deanna don't even get names for their Robin Hood characters. They're just extra members of the gang. Troy gets one gag where she accidentally shoots Data with an arrow that is hackneyed but well executed visually. Crusher gets to put a bandage on Worf's arm after a fight, and they both get to smash pottery over bad guys' heads while everyone else is clubbing and stabbing and slashing. Why can't the ladies get in on some killing? Beyond the treatment of the women in the cast, the other major flaw in the episode is Q's motivation for doing the whole thing in the first place. He says he wants to repay Picard because without Picard's help during his last visit, Q would surely have taken his own life. That's not exactly how it went, but whatever, I'm willing to go with that. Then, Q decides to teach Picard that his love for Vash is a weakness, and he does this by giving Picard the opportunity to heroically save her life, which Picard does. And when it's over, Q is like, "Well, I hope you've learned your lesson." What? there's a real lack of clarity regarding what Q is trying to accomplish and how the Robin Hood scenario is supposed to accomplish it, whatever it is. And the episode just kind of tries to shove past that because ultimately it's just an excuse to get to the Robin Hood stuff. And the Robin Hood stuff works and is a lot of fun. So that lack of clarity doesn't sink the episode, but it does have a why are they even here quality that could have been eliminated if Q's motivations and goals were a little less vague. Overall, though, really enjoyable episode. I like goofy Star Trek, and I like Robin Hood, especially the Kevin Costner one, but the Errol Flynn version is a classic that cannot be denied, so I like Qpid. Patrick Stewart makes a good Robin Hood, albeit a middle-aged one, kind of like if they took the Robin Hood from Robin and Marion and quantum leaped him back into his youthful adventures. Q is his usual funny, bothersome self, and this time, while he's still an adversary, he also wants to help Picard, which will be his motivation for most of his remaining TNG appearances, so it's a notable show for that reason as well. Those are my thoughts on Qpid. What do you think of this episode? Please share your thoughts with me in the comments. If you'd like to support this channel, and I sure wish you would, if you can afford it, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, becoming a channel member by clicking the join button, or by making a one-time gift by clicking the thanks button or via PayPal or Venmo. Links are in the description. Please come back next week for another retro review. Next time, I continue my look at Q episodes with a review of another one from TNG, True Q. See you then. Thanks for watching, and take care, everybody.